Hello and welcome to Top Story. Israel is ready to withdraw from the Golan Heights in return for peace, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad confirmed on Thursday. Assad said he had received a message from Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan that Israel was willing to pull out of the Golan. Israel and Syria remain technically at war over the region, which was seized by the Israelis in 1967, and Damascus has made the return of the Heights a condition for the resumption of peace talks. The revelation has stirred a hornet's nest of protest in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, where some MPs say they'll seek to accelerate the passage of legislation making withdrawal from the Golan dependent on a referendum. Olmert's office hasn't denied the reports, but diplomatic officials have been pointing out that any deal on the Golan would have to be linked to substantial Syrian concessions. In particular, ending support for Hamas, reducing ties with Iran, and dropping backing for Hezbollah in Lebanon. Even with the Golan in the equation, that remains a tall order. Well, joining me now to discuss what's going on is Alain Gresh, who's Deputy Editor of Le Monde Diplomatique. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. Some consternation, it seems, in the Knesset about the revelations of how far these talks have been going, but there is a long way to go before a deal is done on Golan, isn't there?
Yes, there is a long way to go, but what's important is the fact that now we know that for 1 year there have been contacts and indirect discussion between Israel and Syria. And both of the leadership are ready to continue in this direction. And this is a very important news.
You say that these talks have been going on for a year now. I mean, how has it been possible to keep them so quiet?
Well, it was really a secret talk, and the Turkish Prime Minister has played an important role, bringing message from one leader to another. There were some hints in some declaration in Syria and in Israel for many months, but this is the first time we have an official confirmation of this negotiation.
Well, you mentioned there the facilitating role of the Turkish Prime Minister. How important has that been?
It's very important because, Turkey has historical relation with Israel. And at the same time, Prime Minister Erdogan has very good relation now with Bashar al-Assad and with Syria for 5 or 6 years. So they are trusted by both parties. So he can play an important role, and he will be in Damascus next weekend to one of the main topics will be to discuss this question between Israel and Syria.
He arrives on Saturday, in fact.
Yes.
Others aren't so happy. I just mentioned now that many members of the Knesset are very unhappy about it, but the United States is looking on askance as well. What is the problem for the United States in a deal between Syria and Israel?
I think the United States is against a deal now because I think that Syria, like Iran, is the axis of evil and it's a basis for terrorism, and we shouldn't make any concession. And they have been increasing the pressure against Syria for now many months and many years, and they don't want to change it. This is very, very clear. But as you know, I mean, for Bashar al-Assad and for Olmert, Bush is in his last year of president. He has not so much influence, and they are betting, I think, on the next president. If the negotiation develop, they hope that United States will enter the negotiation and help facilitate the negotiation.
Why is it, do you think, that Bashar al-Assad has decided to go public about these talks now, which, as you've been saying, have been going on behind the scenes for a year? Why is it now? There's been some speculation, for instance, that it might be linked to the CIA's revelations to the US Congress at the moment about Syrian nuclear reactor being built. Is that
it's
possible?
Clear there are two reasons. One is tactical. It's clear that against the pressure of the United States, to say we are discussing with Israel is a way to be out of the trap. But strategically, for many years, Syria has not changed its position through peace. As you know, in 1999, when Ehud Barak was prime minister and won the election in Israel, there were 1 year negotiation, and we were very near an agreement. And the basis of the agreement is well known. So, and Syria's position has always been, we are ready to enter negotiation, to make peace with Israel, and even to open an Israeli embassy in Damascus if only if Israel withdraw from all the Golan.
But Israel is going to drive a hard bargain in all of this as well. It's not just a question of agreeing with the Syrians on the Golan. Israel is talking about Syria ending its backing for Hamas, ending its backing for Hezbollah, and reducing to its links with Iran. I mean, as one Israeli said the other day, we're not going to do a deal with Syria on the Golan if it means that President Ahmadinejad of Iran will be swimming in the Sea of Galilee the next day.
Yeah. There are two aspects in the negotiation between Syria and Israel. One is linked with the Golan and the bilateral relation. There is the problem of security, the problem of water, and the problem of where is the border exactly. But this, as I said, has been more or less solved in 1999. I don't think it's very complicated. But of course, the other point, which is very difficult for Syria, is what is the role of Syria in the regional contest. As you know, the relation between Syria and Iran has been ongoing for 30 years. It's the strongest bilateral relation we have in the region. And now Iran is helping Syria on an economic base. So to make Syria break its relation with Iran will be very difficult. I mean, it will need economic help from the United States, from the Western countries. It will need, I mean, for the Bashar al-Assad to take a strategic decision. Will he take it or not? I'm not sure.
What about Hamas and Hezbollah? Hezbollah, I suppose, is very closely linked to the relationship with Iran. What about Hamas?
You know, Hamas as Hezbollah are independent organizations. I mean, they are very rooted in the Palestinian population and in the Lebanese Shiite population. So even if there is a break of the relation, or at least Syria is not helping as much Hezbollah and Hamas that it was doing before, they will not disappear. They will be there. And to borrow for Israel, Hamas will be a problem with Syria or without Syria.
Briefly, because we're running out of time, even if the contours of a deal can be mapped out now, how easy is it going to be to sell it to the Israeli people?
It will be difficult for one reason is the political system in Israel as you know, the majority, there are so many parties and so many disputes between the parties. It's very difficult to have a majority. That's why they are speaking of a referendum. A referendum will be very difficult to win. But at the same time, I think that this is the alternative is very clearly peace with Damascus, an Israeli embassy in Damascus. And I'm
afraid I'm going to have to stop you there. That's all we have time for today. Thanks to our guest, Alain Kresh. Join us again next week for another edition of Top Story. Have a good weekend.